Welcome to the Infuse Your Future podcast, where we bring together people and ideas who are making the world a better place. I'm your host, Dr. C. In this podcast, you're going to hear solo episodes with various self-help topics. You're also going to hear guest speakers from all walks of life. If you're ready to experience the power of coaching, set up a complimentary 45-minute consultation with me at infuseyourfuture.com. And be sure to sign up for my mailing list for a free gift. Enjoy the show. I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, Mary Laske Bell. She's a breathwork facilitator and has a PhD in sociology where she specialized in how stress relates to mental health outcomes. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got interested in this line of work.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's funny. I'm always like, where does my story start? Because, people know that I have a PhD, but I'm not in academia. So like, where did I kind of trail off? And I think it's just, my whole life, I've wanted to help people. I have felt this calling to just help people. And so even in grad school and studying sociology and studying the relationship between stressors and mental health outcomes, I knew that I didn't want to go on into academia and I loved the research, but the path that I was on was going to take me to do research in an office, to share with other sociologists and teach college courses, which is great, but we know that, what is it, like 25% of the population has a college degree. So I just knew that it was limiting and that it was going to put me in this box to kind of talk to people who already knew a lot of this stuff. And that just didn't seem fulfilling to me. I wanted to help people who maybe don't know how to heal or don't know what's available to them to help themselves and get better, right? So out of grad school, I kind of just took whatever job I could get because I had been on this path to go into academia, and I was like, nope, that's not it. So left grad school making like $13 an hour at my first job. And even though it was, what was that, 2014, that still wasn't a lot of money back then. And just kind of worked my way up. I worked with a lot of small businesses. I worked, got to learn a lot of sales and marketing and operations and how to run a business, boots on the ground style. And along the way, even like midway through grad school, I became a certified Reiki practitioner. And I tried to run a business while I was in grad school before knowing all of the business side of things. And so it didn't go great. I had amazing clients and, I knew how to relate to people and how to build the relationships, but I had no idea how to market myself or sell myself or any of that. So like to really grow it. But then after grad school, learning from business owners, working side by side with them and gaining all of this knowledge, it's kind of like it's come full circle where now I know the business knowledge, I know sales, I know marketing, and I'm in the right place to share this healing once again. And so kind of a long journey and lots of winding paths. I feel like I ended up in a similar space, but with a lot more knowledge and skill and experience to actually serve my people to the best ability.
That's such a unique perspective, and I'm glad you went that way because you're right. I mean, we don't really think about it, but if you're just teaching in a classroom, it's almost like preaching to the choir.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I love my mentors in academia, but like it really was a lot of them just talking to each other and competing with each other and whose study is more prestigious and all this. And I'm like, I don't want to, that's not where I'm at. I want to help people on the ground who don't really know all of this higher level, higher education stuff.
So what do you do now? You said you came full circle. So how do you work with people now?
Yeah. So I have two businesses. I still have a email marketing agency. And, I do copywriting and stuff like that. But I also now have an online breathwork membership and community for entrepreneurs. And so we meet every week doing like little bite-sized breathwork practices. Um, all the different challenges that entrepreneurs face, too many clients or not enough clients, or um, looking for investors for their business and the stress that comes along with that. And, oh, I got to hit these numbers and grow to a certain level. And, in order to get the investors, and trying to balance family. A lot of the people in my community are entrepreneurs with families. They're parents, and so we have a lot of demands as parents. How do we balance all of that with these demands to grow a business and be really successful on the business side? How do you not neglect yourself and your family and your other relationships outside of work? So it's really like a supportive community that helps them with the growth in a way that is a lot less hustle focused. I am anti-hustle culture. It's a big value of mine, is anti-hustle culture. And so we meet for these little bite-sized practices based on what's going on with our group as a collective. What is stressing you out this week in your business or in your personal life? What could you use a little bit more of? Could you use more calming energy? Or do you need more motivation this week? Like, where are we at as a collective group? And then we do these little meditations, visualizations, breathwork practices together. And then once a month, we meet for a longer journey that is a specific breathwork technique that really helps with clarity, breakthroughs, trauma healing. It takes them into like theta brainwave state, which allows them to kind of solve problems and heal things that you can't really heal from a very conscious state, the state where we got into the problem, right? You can't heal it from the same place. So we kind of take them out of the head, into the breath and into the heart, into the body, to heal those things. And it's really cool to see, entrepreneurs and a whole mix of people. I've got men and women in the community, to see them really have benefits like I did for myself. That was the goal. I saw what breathwork did for me, and I was like, I know other entrepreneurs need this. I got to share it.
And I would imagine that entrepreneurs, they need a lot of resiliency and a lot of balance. And it sounds like breath work fits right into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because I think, and I'm in marketing, I'm in the online industry, and I see so much of that whole industry as very masculine energy. The hustle, the drive, the competition, the push, the force, the fighting for what you want, fighting for your business growth. It's all very masculine energy, which is great. We need a little bit of masculine energy, right? We need to be able, as entrepreneurs, we need to be able to show up with confidence, have some energy and oomph in our step. We need to be able to think logically. We need to be able to negotiate. But so many entrepreneurs are neglecting feminine energy, the receiving, the allowing, the creative thinking, the intuition, which is, in my opinion, so extremely valuable and effective for growth. And it's like most of the industry is completely ignoring that entire half of, strategy to build your business. And they're just focused on the tactics that they've seen for years, right? So I'm trying to show them a different way, and that there's a way to incorporate both and have some balance, which impacts balance in your whole life too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, what's your advice on achieving that balance? Because I also live in the United States, and
yeah, we don't value balance as a whole, like as a culture, right?
Right. It becomes very difficult. I mean, I end up feeling lazy compared to the people that I'm around, but the amount of work they do is just inhuman. And I don't like that I allow myself to feel lazy because of the surrounding environments. Like I think about what I do in a day and I think, God, that is a lot. But when I compare it to a few of the main people around me, it doesn't even come close. So how do you strike that balance? How do you, and as you know, in today's world, it is extremely competitive. So if you have a family, you have to be able to support them. The rents, especially in California, they're ridiculous. So being able to, with the escalating prices, the escalating cost of living, the pressure to raise your family and give them a good education, and then you work in you live in this hustle, work culture. How do you find the balance and be able to give your family a good life?
Yeah. So even you giving some of those examples, my stomach tightens up. Like it causes this anxiety, right? And so I think the number one piece of advice I would give is, well, there's a few, but like the number one is, if you're feeling that pressure, if you're feeling that stress, pause a second, become aware of the breath. Are you even breathing right now? And I say that kind of jokingly because of course you're breathing. It's an involuntary process in the body that keeps you alive. So you're always breathing. But if this is your belly, are you breathing like this? Or like, are you expanding the belly and opening the belly and opening the chest and allowing breath to come in and calm your body and calm that anxiety? Or are you just like shoving it down, sitting in the anxiety, letting your brain trail off into all of the, well, this bill and that bill, and we got to hit this goal and that, and the family needs this, and the rent and the money and the groceries and like for me, because I know it's hard to like just give the advice. So I'll share a story and like my own experience. So I found that in my own business, and there's ebbs and flows to the revenue, right? But when I would push and force things and stress about where's the next client coming from, and is my pipeline full enough, and am I posting enough on social media? Like all of that anxiety and forcing things to work, my income would dip. And as soon as I would go, oh my gosh, I can't live like this. I need to breathe. And you see me, my body, I even sit back when I get to this point in the story. I'm like, I need to sit back. I need to breathe. I need to be open to receiving. I need to walk away and do something else for a minute. Go outside, walk in nature, be in the sunshine, soak up the vitamin D, hang out with my dog, like take my dog for a walk. I need to just calm, center, refocus. And I found that when I would get in these more restful, quiet places, that's when my leads would come to me. And I would get random messages out of the blue. And somebody was in a mastermind with 2 years ago would reach out and be like, hey, do you still have an email marketing agency? I got a client for you. Yes, I do. And yes, I will gladly have a conversation with them. So I found that every time I pushed, things would dip. So like the energy was anxious and the money would respond. And every time I sat back and rested and trusted and allowed, it would come in. Now, this happened again and again. And you would think I would learn the lesson and be like, okay, I need more balance. But I would always come back to the hustle and the drive and the anxiety and the push and the fear and the lack. I would always come back to it until October of last year. I ended up in the emergency room and had to have emergency gallbladder surgery. And the way I explain this is like the universe was trying to share the lesson with me. You need more rest. You need to allow more receiving. You cannot control it all. Let me bring you some gifts instead of you always trying to hunt for them. But it did it with my money for so long. And apparently that wasn't a big enough wake-up call. And so the universe was finally like, all right, if you're not going to get the lesson with your money, I'm going to show it to you through your health. And that was absolutely the right place to hit me with it, because what are we doing this for? I'm doing it to support my family and to pay for the private school for my kids and to put organic groceries on the table, right? But if I'm not here, they don't have their mom and they don't have that income and those groceries in that private school, right? So, like, for me, it became just this absolute wake up call of the more you stay unbalanced or imbalanced and you solely focus on driving and pushing and wearing yourself out, you're achieving the complete opposite goal of what you're after in the first place. And that to me was like, oh, this is bigger than what my business looks like today. It's my family. It's the next 30 years, 40, 50 years with my family. It's my legacy. It's my kids growing up with a mom who's in good health, who's not in the hospital, stuff like that. So if I can share that story, like I find that what is attracting my breathwork clients to me is me sharing the stories of what I've been through rather than saying, here's what you need to do and here's why you need to do it. It's like, look, this is what happened to me and here's how I started incorporating breathwork and here's what happened after that. That people are like, oh my gosh, I'm in that state. I need that calm balance. I want what you're providing, So it's less of like, here's what you should do and more like, I don't have a unique story. That could happen to any one of us, right? If we don't force ourselves to find that balance
And
or let the
certainly a lot,
universe force it.
and certainly a lot of women know the importance of breath work when we go through childbirth. Most of us are taught the Lamaze method, which is essentially breathing.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I didn't do a lot of like prep before my kids came. I think I took I have a picture on my phone of me in this baby class learning how to change diapers and stuff because I was never a babysitter either. I never had much experience at all with kids until I had mine. So I think I was taking this baby care class a week before I had my first daughter. Maybe it was even a couple days before she was born. So I never learned Lamaze or proper breathing or anything like that, but I knew breath work. I knew how to turn on parasympathetic nervous system through breath, and get into that rest and digest state, how to slow things down. And I remember one of the nurses saying like, oh, you're breathing great. And I was like, okay, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing what feels good, right? And what I've learned in my own body is the right way for me to breathe in a stressful situation, So it's funny. I think a lot of people are more tapped in and intuitive to what they need. They ignore it or they push it to the side or they don't allow it to come in.
Now, what kinds of things do you teach when you have a client that works with breath? What does that look like? What kinds of things does it help with? Who needs to work with you?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for asking that. So I think breathwork is beneficial for so many people. And I do it in person here in Akron, Ohio, at a couple different yoga studios. And so that's like anybody comes to that, right? Men, women. I love it when families come, like mother, daughter. I had a mom bring her two sons once, which was awesome. So in that setting, like those are my people, just anybody in the community who wants to come. It's good for calming anxiety, healing trauma. Like there's anti-inflammatory benefits to breath work. It can help reduce pain. Like when I tell you the first time I ever saw a bulleted list of benefits from breath work, it was like 3 columns, with 15 points each. I was like, okay, all right. So it is very powerful. In my online community, this is specifically for entrepreneurs, and it's to help them with that balance and slowing down and inviting in more of the feminine energy and strategy to how they're going to grow their business and how they're going to, I guess, grow a values driven business to where they're still spending time with family and they're not sitting tip tapping away at their keyboard until midnight, or working through dinner or checking their phone through dinner while their kids are asking for their attention. A lot of it is like, how do we let go as entrepreneurs of some of what we've learned, how to do this, how to grow, and invite in a more aligned, more calm, more laid back, more receiving energy to that business growth.
Yeah. And I would imagine that entrepreneurs, CEOs especially need this. And the great thing about breath work is, you could do it in the middle of a meeting while someone's talking, while you're still paying attention.
Yes. That's what I tell them too, is like, nobody has to know you're doing it. Some of the techniques we use are a little different because you have to lay down and it's very intense, but a lot of them you could do. That's why I tell people, like, if you're going to a networking event and you're nervous or you prefer to be a wallflower or you hate that small talk, there are some techniques you can do that nobody knows you're doing that are going to calm you, that are going to make you more confident, that are going to help you speak more clearly and just really connect with people. And nobody has to know you're doing it,
And how long do these techniques take?
I mean, a lot of them can be done either in like 3 rounds, like just take 3 rounds of this breath, or, 5 or 10 minutes. The biggest thing is that, like I said, most people are not breathing deep or slow or in a controlled way at all, like ever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can even incorporate a few rounds of really aware breath, that's going to just slow you down and help you recenter, like huge benefits right there from just a couple seconds or minutes of your time. It's so worth it.
Well, I know, especially speaking to anxiety, I still work part-time as a podiatrist, and we do
Oh,
a lot of
cool.
ingrown toenails, and people, the anxiety is high there.
Oh,
You have
yeah.
someone you don't even know about ready to inject you with an anesthetic. And that's one of my big go-tos, is get them into deep, measured breathing. And it just helps tremendously get them back
Yeah,
to a better state so that they're not so anxious.
that's awesome. I love that you offer that to them because, that's not like, at least I wouldn't think that that's super traditional, bedside manner, but like that's going above and beyond the procedure that they're about to have done and coming to like a more human connection with a patient. I think that's beautiful.
I know this is pretty random, but what about like sleep apnea? Do your
Mm.
techniques help people with sleep apnea?
I haven't had anybody come to me with sleep apnea. And I actually know a couple people who do have it, so I should convince them to come and see what happens. Um, but I have had people who have trouble sleeping, either falling asleep or staying asleep, where breath work has helped them immensely. Um, this is also totally random, but I had a woman who said that she had suffered from disordered eating for like her entire adult life. And one breathwork session, she said that whole week after was the best she's ever felt. She didn't feel like she was super focused on food that whole time. Like, she just said she felt lighter and freer from all of the stuff that usually hounds her. Um, I have a guy in my breathwork membership right now who originally came because he was having some heart problems, and he went to the doctor and they were like, yeah, I don't know, we've checked your heart, we don't see anything wrong. And he started to think maybe some of it was psychosomatic, that it's just the stress and anxiety that he's putting himself under. And within a few weeks of being inside the membership and doing a few breathwork sessions and learning the techniques, right? Like, they learn the techniques, but then they can use them anytime they need. um, his symptoms have gone away. And
Nice.
it's
And how long
like,
is an average session?
so inside the membership, we meet every week, and those calls are 30 minutes. Um, and the breathwork session itself is usually anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. We spend the first part of the call talking. Like it's another nice benefit of the membership is just like talking with other entrepreneurs, understanding that what you're experiencing, you're not alone in, because somebody will say, I'm having a tough week. Like I thought I had all of these prospects lined up and nobody's biting, nobody's saying yes. And I'm just like so stressed out. And somebody else will be like, I'm having the exact same issue this week. So it's like they also get to connect and bond over those experiences. And then we breathe together. We're like, okay, what kind of technique could we use to handle some of that anxiety that's happening and maybe even release and let go to open space to allow something to come in, like what's blocked, that we've got all these prospects lined up, but like, and I'm doing this with my hands, like they can't come in, something is blocked. So how can we use the breath to open that up and allow space for something new to come in? um some people would call what we're doing very woo woo. But I mean, the results speak for themselves. So I'm like, I don't really care if people think it's woo woo. I've got a guy who's like, I didn't think something like this would be for me because I'm just pretty straightforward and logical thinking, and I'm not very spiritual. And then he comes in and has all these breakthroughs, and he's like, I love it here.
Well, I think there's a lot, even scientific evidence that shows that slowing down and being deliberate and being methodical are all really important for growth and also health. I
Yeah.
like that you mentioned the benefits for people that have experienced trauma, and you kind of touched on the benefits from a medical perspective. You had a person who felt like they had heart disease. All of these medical tools, they they measure very specific things,
Hmm.
but medical problems are much greater than that. And so it's very easy to miss something just because you had an MRI or an EKG or an X-ray. It doesn't mean that you don't have a problem if they don't show anything.
Hmm.
And evidence has shown time and time again that anxiety, lifestyle, fear, stress in general, it makes medical problems worse.
Absolutely.
It creates medical problems, inflammatory bowel disease, um, anything that causes inflammation or stress, cancer. A lot of times, cancer is initiated because of stress. I mean, you might have the gene, but it's only going to show up in certain environments. And stress is a big one that brings it on.
Yeah.
So, any way that we can reduce stress, which correct me if I'm wrong, breathing is a huge stress reducer, especially when you learn how to do it
Absolutely.
right, gets you
That's
into a
right.
better frame of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge. Yeah, that was the in grad school, that was the model we used. Was It's called the stress process model. It's like you've got stressors, whatever they could be, and you have health outcomes, mental and physical and emotional. We didn't really study that in sociology, but there's emotional outcomes too. If you increase the stress, you increase the outcomes, right? Um, but then there's these buffers in the middle where even if stress is high, if I have social support or a technique like breath work, it's not going to affect the health outcomes as severely as if those buffers weren't there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely there's tools that can help for sure.
And I know even in my own experience, I sustained an injury to a facial nerve back in like 2015 or something like that.
Mm,
And, the intensity of the pain is directly correlated to the stress in my life and how well I'm handling it. If I'm handling my stress well, it's just like a 2 out of 10
mm,
pain. Actually, almost feels good. Like there's a little blanket covering my face, but the stress keeps racking up and it's pretty painful.
yeah.
So it's a way to keep my stress levels in check.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, that sucks and it's uncomfortable, but isn't it nice that like the body is trying to communicate with us to slow down or to heal or when we've had enough? Um, I think that's also just a really important piece to all of this. You know, we have to become aware and then listen to the body's cues because it is trying to tell us things. I want people to like tap into their own intuition too and listen to what the body and the mind and the emotions are trying to tell you. Because they're your body's whole job is to keep you alive and keep you healthy, right? So um if something is off, you got to listen to it.
Yeah, listen to your gut, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would imagine that doing regular breath work would kind of enhance your internal intuition so that you can listen to your gut more and it's more accurate more often.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's been a huge benefit for me myself in all of this, especially when it comes to business. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are multi-passionate and want to do all of the things. And, you know, some of them even either are diagnosed ADHD or, you know, I think a lot of people are just kind of fitting under this umbrella too of like the ADHD entrepreneur who just has so many ideas and wants to execute them all. And how do we, and it's like, I used to be that way too. And I just feel more focused than ever. And it's very easy for me, even if, you know, all of my friends are saying, oh, we joined this thing and you should join. And it's very easy for me to look at it and go, does that help me with the one thing I'm focused on or not? No, it doesn't. Okay, that's a quick no for me. Even if there's FOMO, like I don't really get FOMO anymore. Like it's very in tune and aligned and clear. And I know for a fact I owe that to breath work. Because it's very easy to get out of sync and out of alignment with your values when you're not like constantly taking care of yourself, you know?
Now, what's your most successful experience with breath work?
Like me personally or a client or
Either one.
okay. I would say, well, and this is for me and for some of my clients that have experienced it. Um, because we've all experienced some level of trauma, right? And you hear people talk about like big T trauma or little T trauma. Even, you know, a kid making fun of you on the playground at 5 years old can still have lasting effects on you at 30, 40, 50 years old, right? Like that is little T trauma that is still impacting you today. Just like one little example. Um, I think one of the biggest breakthroughs I've had and some of my clients have had is that you think that you have healed something from years ago, but you realize in breath work that there was still trauma coming up for that, that there was still trauma response happening now today for something that happened to you 20, 30, 40 years ago. Um, and just learning and realizing that like there's different phases to healing and that maybe what you experienced, you know, 10 years ago when you started working on this, now you're going, oh, I was aware that there was trauma and I had accepted the trauma, but that is not healing it.
Mm.
But you think it's healed. You're like, oh, I'm aware of that. I accept it. Okay, now I can move on. And I just realized, and a lot of my clients realize, like, no, there are many more layers deep to go beyond just awareness and acceptance. Um, so that's been huge for me because, you know, some patterns I've had my whole life are finally being broken because stuff I thought was healed wasn't. And now we're actually getting somewhere with it. Um, And the thing about, you know, like I said, tapping into theta brainwave states through breath work is there's only so much your like conscious being is ready to handle or ready to admit or confront. When we tap into a different area of the brain, it's like ego gets quiet um, the protective barrier comes down, and things can be exposed to you that you didn't know consciously were still there. And you can go, oh my gosh, this needs love. Oh my gosh, this needs healing. This needs a hug. This needs to feel safe. Wow, I had no idea that was still there. Um, so it's funny. I think sometimes people feel shame about what needs healing, either because they think they played a role in their own trauma. They think they were responsible or contributed to it happening, or they just think it's been so long. I should be over it by now. I should be healed. There's something wrong with me if I'm not healed yet. Why can't I let it go? Everybody else can, and then this comparison comes up, which you had mentioned comparison earlier too, but like the comparison comes in, everybody else is fine. Other people have been through worse things than me. I should be fine. But none of that exists in the theta brainwave state. Theta brainwave state is just like, here it is. And you get to now be aware of it, and heal it and love it and care for it. And there's no shame. It happens to all of us. We've all experienced trauma, and we all have some healing to do. I've met people who are like, oh, I'm done with my healing. Like, that's adorable.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. So if you could summarize 3 reasons why you are excited about breath work, why you think everyone should be doing this, why you think people need to hire someone like you to help them do this, what would it be?
Mm. So the first thing, and I say this a lot, I say this in almost every class I teach when I'm facilitating breath work. And it was my mentor, Rebecca Kordecki, who first shared this with me, is the idea that, or the fact that the breath is the only involuntary process in the body that we can override and control for benefits, right? You can't control blood flow unless it's through the breath. You can't control your heart beating unless it's through the breath. Like, the breath is the only one in the body that's happening on its own that we can take control of and manipulate for our own benefit. So I think that's super cool. Okay, so that's number one, is that it's the only involuntary process in your body that you can override and control. The fact that you can use it for your own healing is amazing. Like, you don't have to, and I say this as a Reiki master teacher, you don't have to go to a healer to be healed when you're using breath work. It's within you. There's a section when I'm teaching or facilitating a breathwork journey, there's one section of it where I tell them, like, okay, you are the healer during this part of the journey. I'm not going to coach you. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to put my eyes to the ground, so no eyes are on you. Nobody's judging you. Nobody knows what you're thinking or what you're processing right now. You are the healer. And so, as a person who used to have clients come to me because I had the healing and I would share it, I think it's like the coolest thing in the world that the breath is within you. So you are the healer, right? I'll show you how to do the technique, but it comes from you and it comes from within. And if you are anywhere on that wavelength of believing that everything in the external is a reflection of what's happening internally, then that should excite you, right? The fact that if you heal yourself within, then things externally will change. I think that's super cool. For the online membership in particular, I'm just really excited because I don't see a lot of this type of support offered to entrepreneurs. Again, I think a lot of what's out there is very masculine strategies, and I'm bringing a feminine energy strategy to the market. And I think that that's very exciting. And it's just a supportive community. Like, yes, you can do breath work on your own, And you can take the techniques I share with you and do them on your own. But people come week after week and month after month for the community aspect and to do this as a group together. And I always share we do a community share at the end of each long breathwork journey. And I remind them that vulnerability speeds up and facilitates healing. And we're not really allowed to be vulnerable out there. In here, we come together. And part of the reason we do a community share about the experience afterwards is to be vulnerable in front of other people. Sharing what you've experienced can help somebody else, and it can also help you. And so I don't know if I named like 3 or 4 in there, but like all of those things make me excited about facilitating breathwork to the masses, and then also particularly working with entrepreneurs and helping that community online who doesn't have necessarily, right? Like it's easy to hop on Zoom when you're hopping on Zoom all day. As opposed to the people who come to me in person, they're usually coming to a yoga studio. They got to set aside time to do that. My clients who are entrepreneurs online, it's like just one more meeting that they're attending, but it's probably the most beneficial one that they'll attend all day.
So true. Yeah, I think the whole COVID experience was a wake-up call to people about community.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, technology has isolated us more and more and more, and we're just a society of lonely people.
Yeah.
So the community, again, reduces stress, brings people together. Like you said, allows people to be vulnerable in a safe place. If you pick the right community, it's very important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that social support, like as I mentioned with that stress process model, stress can be high, but if you have a social support system in place, it buffers the effects that stress has on your health.
Now, where could someone go to experience a sample breathwork session, even if they don't have any money to invest?
Right. Absolutely. So I usually share opportunities to come join us and try it out on my email list. And so I can give you the link for that. The fun part is when you sign up for my email list, you're going to get a free breathwork session. It's recorded, but it's about bringing in abundance. And so when you get on the list, you'll have an opportunity to download that video for free so you can kind of get a little sampling. And then when there are opportunities to come join us on a session for free to sample it out, I'm usually posting that either on my social media, always to my email list. And so, yeah, probably getting on my email list is the best way to stay in touch with what's going on.
That's great. Now, I like to leave a call to action to people at the end of each episode. Do you have a call to action for people, how they can use breath work to start making their lives more peaceful and less stressful today?
If I was going to give you a call to action, it would be, I think that example I gave of coming into awareness. So if you just start to slow down and become aware of what you're feeling throughout the day, when tension gets high, when anxiety gets high, or when you start feeling depressed or anything like this, when you notice a dip in emotion or a spike in stress, I want you to stop in that moment and look at how you're breathing. And if it's very shallow and like barely moving and barely expanding, see if you can drop the shoulders real quick, because usually they're up tight too, right? Up high. So like drop the shoulders, soften the belly, because a lot of us stand with our belly tightly pulled in too. So drop the shoulders, drop the belly, and just take some slow, deep breaths, 3 or 4 rounds, right? And if you can maybe count those breaths out, I would say make your exhale twice as long as your inhale. So maybe you inhale for 4 seconds, and then can you exhale for 8? So really slowing that down. And again, 3, 4 rounds of that just to settle where you're at in that moment of stress, then reevaluate what you're feeling after that. And I want you to do it, like, just pick one day, and I want you to do it every time that stuff comes up. And just see how your day changes compared to how you normally handle that stress and anxiety.
That sounds like great advice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time.
I'm so glad you invited me. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope you got something fun and useful from today's episode. If you know anybody who would like to listen, please hit that share button to help us grow. Have a great day.